Today's lesson is all about solving proportions with cross products. In the previous lesson, we talked about solving proportions using mental math. Well, today's is about actually putting a procedure that will always work no matter what your numbers are. And I like things like that are guaranteed to work as long as you follow a set amount of steps. So today's objective, we're going to solve proportions by using a cross product. And there are 3 vocabulary words you need to remember. Ratio we've talked about before. Ratio is a comparison of 2 quantities by division. This is another word for a fraction. Fraction is a fancy, schmancy type of ratio. Compares part to whole. A proportion. A proportion is an equation stating 2 ratios are equivalent. Basically, you're going to have a fraction equal to a fraction or ratio equal to a ratio. Cross products. Cross products is the procedure we're going to do. It says for 2 ratios, the product of the first term in one ratio, not ration, I don't know why it does that, and the second term in the other. If the cross products are equal, the ratio forms a proportion, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Looking at cross products, if we have A over B equals C over D, and B and D are not equal to 0, because remember that makes our calculator explode, the cross products A times D, so if we take these 2 numbers, A times D and C times B, if those are equal, then it forms a proportion. I like to call the cross products my Billy Bob Joe the butterfly, so here's my little butterfly and the wings. So if you hear me talk about Billy Bob Joe the butterfly, I'm talking about cross products. In example 1, we're actually going to determine whether or not ratios are proportional. We do not know if they are. Let's look at example 1. I have 8 24ths and 10 30ths as my 2 ratios. To determine whether or not these are equal, we're going to actually set up our cross products. And since I don't know whether or not they're equal, I'm putting that question mark over the equal sign. Do my butterflies. And we're going to actually multiply them out. And Mrs. Carmichael taught me something that was so cool. If you do 30 times 8 and then write the number up here, so 30 times 8 would be 240. And then do 24 times 10 is 240. 240 equals 240. So these are proportional. But the cool thing about writing the numbers on top like that is that, say for some reason, this fraction over here, or this cross product, let's just for giggles make it 270. If this were 270 and this one were 240, then 8 24ths would be the bigger ratio. Pretty cool, huh? All right, so I'm going to have you go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to try the next one on your own. You are going to need to compare 18 20ths and 18 180ths. So tell me whether or not they're a proportion and which one's bigger. All right. Next up, we're actually going to solve a proportion. So in yesterday's lesson, we had black beans and tomatoes, and we were trying to set up and solve using mental math how many tomatoes we would need if we had 6 cups of black beans, whereas in the original recipe, we needed 1 tomato for every 1.5 cups of black beans. This time, we're going to have something like this. It's going to be already set up for us, this proportion here, 36 over x. Now, on this one, we can use mental math because 6 and 36 are compatible numbers. 6 times 6 is 36, so that means I'm going to have to multiply 10 times 6 to get my answer. Just doing mental math here, we should know that x will be equal to 60. That's really helpful for us because when we do the procedure of finding the cross products, we can check it to make sure it's reasonable. But I want to go ahead and practice the cross products procedure by setting up and doing our cross products. All right, so let's draw our Billy Bob Joe the butterfly. And we're going to multiply the terms that are in the wings. And I always start with the wing that has my variable, so this one right here. We're going to use our knowledge of solving equations, which I know you all are the bomb at. And this is going to be 6 times x, spit out my equal sign, and then I have to do 10 times 36. Tack on that 0, and it makes it 360. This is a one-step equation where I'm multiplying, so to do the inverse operation, I'm going to divide both sides by 6. Those 1 out, and I have x equals 60. Check it out, it matched. Now the nice thing about the cross products is it's going to work for numbers that are not compatible with each other, that are not necessarily nice. I'm going to give you an example here that you're going to have to solve and tell me what you get. So here's 12 and 3/10 over m equals 75 over 100. This one is not easily done with mental math, so you definitely want to follow those cross product steps, the Billy Bob Joe the butterfly. Let's look at example 3. A certain shade of paint is made by mixing 5 parts blue paint with 2 parts white paint. To get the correct shade, how many quarts of white paint should be mixed with 8.5 quarts of blue paint? Biggest thing here is making sure to set up your proportion correctly like we did in the last video. I'm going to go ahead and set up my table, that funky looking tic-tac-toe board. We have blue paint that we need. We also have white paint. We have the original, and we have the new. So we started with 5 parts blue paint to 2 parts white paint. And it says how many quarts of white paint should be mixed with 8.5 quarts of blue paint. So I'm going to put in 8.5 quarts, 8.5 there for blue. And we don't know the new white paint, so I'm going to put in an X. If you see here, we've got a proportion hidden in our table. I'm going to go ahead and write that out to the side so we can set up our cross products and solve. 5 halves equals 8.5 over X. Cross products, Billy Bob Joe the butterfly, start with the wing with the variable. 5x, 8.5 times 2 is 17. Divide both sides by 5 to solve my equation. So x will be equal to, if we type this in the calculator, yay, you get to use your calculator, is 3 4/10, but we need a label. So this was 8.5 quarts blue, and then X will be quarts, but quarts white. So 3 4/10 quarts white paint. And that's our answer.